the taste of mud mixed with blood in his mouth. It was a copper, metallic taste that he hadn't felt in 30 years. The old man lay face down in the dirt of the main street, his cheek pressed against the rough gravel. Above him, laughter erupted. It wasn't the warm laughter of friends. It was the sharp, hyena-like cackle of men who enjoyed inflicting pain. A heavy boot slammed into his ribs, rolling him over. Elias groaned, clutching his side, his faded blue eyes blinking against the harsh midday sun. Standing over him were 5 of them, the Diablo brothers. They were young, loud, and reeked of cheap whiskey and unwashed bodies. The leader, a man with a jagged scar running down his neck named Silas, spun his revolver on his finger. He looked down at Elias with pure contempt. "Look at him, boys. This is what passes for a man in this town? He looks more like a dried-up piece of leather than a farmer." Silas spat, the saliva landing inches from Elias's boot. The old man didn't speak. He didn't beg. He just stared. His hands, calloused from years of plowing hard earth, were trembling slightly. Not from fear, though the boys couldn't tell the difference. They were trembling from the effort it took not to snap Silas's neck right there. "Please," Elias whispered, his voice raspy like dry leaves. "I just came for the flour. Take the money. Just let me take the supplies back to my wife. She's sick." Silas laughed again, kicking the sack of flour that lay beside the old man. The white powder exploded into the air, coating Elias's worn jacket like ghostly dust. "We don't care about your wife, old-timer. We don't care about your flour. This is our town now. We take what we want, we hurt who we want, and right now I want your horse." Elias's eyes shifted to the old mare tied to the post. She was all he had left to pull the plow. Without her, the farm would die. Without the farm, he and Martha would starve. "You can't," Elias said, pushing himself up to his knees. "Take the watch, take my boots, leave the horse." Silas stopped laughing. He leaned in close, the smell of tobacco heavy on his breath. He drew his pistol and pistol-whipped Elias across the forehead. The crack of metal on bone echoed through the silent street. The townspeople watched from behind shuttered windows, too terrified to intervene. Elias fell back, darkness swimming in his vision. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard the horse whinny and panic as they cut the rope. He heard them riding away, whooping and hollering like demons let loose from hell. He heard Silas shout one last thing over his shoulder. "Stay down, old man. Next time we won't leave you breathing." Elias lay there for a long time. The dust settled. The sun began to dip lower. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up. He wiped the blood from his eyes. He looked at the spilled flour. He looked at the empty hitching post. The trembling in his hands stopped. His eyes, previously dull and defeated, changed. The blue faded, replaced by something darker, something cold. The townspeople thought they saw a broken farmer stumbling home. They were wrong. They were watching a ghost come back to life. The walk back to the ranch took 4 hours. By the time Elias limped up the porch steps, the moon was high and full, casting long, skeletal shadows across the fields he had tried so hard to cultivate. He opened the door. The house was quiet. Martha was asleep in the back room, her breathing shallow. He paused at her door, listening. He needed to make sure she was safe. He couldn't tell her what had happened. She thought he was a simple man, a man who knew soil and seeds. She didn't know the man he was before they met. She didn't know the name, the Reaper of Shiloh. Elias went to the kitchen. He poured water into a basin and washed the dried blood from his face. The water turned pink. He stared at his reflection in the dark glass of the window. The wrinkles were deep, the hair white, but the eyes were the same ones that had stared down cannons in '64. He dried his face and walked to the center of the living room. He moved the heavy oak table aside. He pulled back the rug. Underneath, the floorboards were loose. He hadn't touched them in 2 decades. He pried them open with a grunt of exertion. A cloud of stale air rose up, smelling of oil and memories. There, wrapped in oilcloth, sat a heavy wooden chest. Elias knelt before it like a man praying at an altar. His fingers traced the lock. He reached into his boot and pulled out a key he had worn around his neck on a leather string every single day of his peaceful life. The lock clicked. It sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. He threw back the lid. The moonlight caught the steel. 2 Navy Colt revolvers, customized with ivory handles. A Winchester lever action rifle, cleaned and oiled perfectly despite the years. A Bowie knife with a blade as wide as a man's hand, and at the bottom, a folded black duster coat and a wide-brimmed hat that had seen too much rain and too much blood. Elias stripped off his farmer's flannel. He took off the suspenders. He put on the black shirt. He strapped the gun belt around his waist. It felt heavy, a burden he had sworn never to carry again. But the world didn't let men like him retire. The world was cruel, and sometimes to fight cruelty, you had to become a monster. He checked the cylinders, 6 rounds in each, 44 caliber death. He loaded the Winchester. He slipped the knife into his boot. Finally, he put on the coat. It swirled around his ankles, hiding the arsenal beneath. He walked to the door, his boots thudding with a heavy, rhythmic cadence. He wasn't Elias the farmer anymore. Elias was dead. He had died in the dirt on Main Street. The man walking out the door was Judgment. He walked to the barn, took the plow horse he hadn't used in years, a massive black beast named Titan, and saddled him. He didn't look back at the house. He rode out into the night, following the tracks of the Diablo brothers. They had stolen his horse. They had humiliated him. But their biggest mistake wasn't the theft. Their biggest mistake was leaving him alive. The Diablo brothers were camped in a box canyon 10 miles north of town. It was a natural fortress, or so they thought. They had a fire roaring, casting flickering orange light against the red rock walls. They were roasting a deer, passing a bottle of whiskey around, recounting the day's events. Silas was laughing, wearing Elias's stolen hat, mocking the old man's plea for mercy. I thought he was gonna cry, Silas roared, slapping his knee. Old fool probably died on the walk home. The gang erupted in laughter. The sound echoed off the canyon walls. They were drunk on power and liquor. They didn't hear the owls stop hooting. They didn't notice the crickets go silent. They didn't see the shadow detach itself from the darkness at the mouth of the canyon. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't a sound. It was the sudden explosion of the whiskey bottle in the hands of the youngest outlaw, a boy named Jimmy. Glass and liquor sprayed everywhere. A split second later, the crack of a rifle shot rolled over them like thunder. Jimmy stared at his empty hand, dumbfounded, before looking at the blood dripping from his fingers. Before anyone could scream, a second shot rang out. The fire log exploded, sending sparks and ash into the air, plunging the camp into semi-darkness. "Take cover!" Silas screamed, flipping a table and diving behind it. The gang scrambled, pulling their guns, firing blindly into the dark. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like strobe lights, revealing nothing but rocks and scrub brush. "Show yourself!" Silas yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "Who are you?" Silence answered him. Heavy, oppressive silence. Then a voice floated out from the darkness. It wasn't loud, but it carried perfectly. It was a voice devoid of humanity. "You took my horse," the voice said. "I'm here to take your souls." A shot rang out from the left. One of the bandits, a brute named Cole, grunted and fell forward, a hole in his shoulder. Another shot from the right. Another bandit went down, clutching his leg. "He's moving!" shouted Jimmy. "He's everywhere!" They weren't fighting an army. They were fighting one man who knew how to use the terrain. Elias moved like smoke. He would fire, roll, sprint to a new position, and fire again. He was herding them. He wasn't shooting to kill yet. He was shooting to terrify. He wanted them to feel the helplessness he had felt in the dirt. He wanted them to know that their youth and their numbers meant nothing against experience. Elias flanked them, climbing the ridge. He looked down at the chaotic camp. He could see Silas trying to rally his men. He racked the lever of his Winchester. The game was over. It was time to finish it. He stood up on the ridge, silhouetted against the full moon, his black duster billowing in the wind. To the men below, he looked like the Grim Reaper himself. Silas looked up and saw the figure on the cliff. For a moment, his breath caught in his throat. It was the old farmer. It had to be. But the posture was wrong. The energy was wrong. That wasn't a farmer. That was a soldier. Kill him! Silas screamed, firing his revolver until it clicked empty. The bullets chipped the rock around Elias, but the old man didn't flinch. He raised his rifle. He didn't aim. He pointed. It was an extension of his will. Bang! Jimmy fell, silent forever. Bang! Cole, trying to crawl to his horse, collapsed. The remaining two bandits broke and ran, scrambling towards the canyon exit. Elias dropped the rifle. It was empty. He drew the two Navy Colts. He slid down the scree slope, his boots kicking up dust, moving with a fluid grace that defied his age. He landed in the center of the camp. The two fleeing bandits turned, desperation in their eyes. They raised their guns. Elias was faster. His hands were a blur. 4 shots rang out in rapid succession. The two men hit the ground before they could pull their triggers. Silence returned to the canyon. Only the crackling of the dying fire and the heavy breathing of Silas remained. The leader of the gang was backed against the canyon wall, his gun empty, his eyes wide with a primal terror. Elias walked towards him, step by slow, deliberate step. The moonlight glinted off the silver barrels of his revolvers. "Stay back!" Silas stammered, his bravado gone. "Do you know who I am? I'm Silas Diablo. People fear me." Elias stopped 5 feet away. He holstered one gun. He kept the other trained on Silas's chest. "Fear is a tool, son, and you don't know how to use it. You use cruelty. Cruelty is weak." Elias stepped closer. The campfire light illuminated his face. It was a map of scars and sorrow. "I gave you a choice," Elias said softly. "I offered you the watch. I offered you the boots. I begged you, not for my life, but for yours." Silas trembled. Who are you?" Elias cocked the hammer of the Colt. It was a loud mechanical click that signaled the end. "I'm the man you should have walked away from." Elias didn't wait for a plea. He didn't wait for an apology. He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the canyon, final and absolute. Elias stood there for a moment, the smoke curling from the barrel. He looked around the camp. It was done. He found his old mare tied near the back. She was spooked but unhurt. He untied her. He gathered the supplies they had stolen, the flour, the sugar, the coffee. He strapped them to the mare. He mounted Titan. He didn't bury the bodies. The coyotes would take care of them. That was the law of the wild. He rode out of the canyon as the sun began to crest over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood and gold. He rode back to the farm. He stabled the horses. He cleaned the guns and put them back in the chest beneath the floorboards. He washed the gunpowder from his hands. When Martha woke up an hour later, she found Elias in the kitchen, making coffee. He smiled at her, though his eyes were tired. "Did you get the flour, Elias?" she asked, yawning. "Yes, Martha," he said, pouring her a cup. "I got everything we needed." He looked out the window at the peaceful fields. The ghost was gone. The farmer remained. But the Diablo gang would never laugh again.